If you're in the greater Chicago area and a taxi driver offers to sell you some luggage, run. Original shared to /r/nasleep August 30, 2016. My friend. The cab driver said it to me over his shoulder, turning like a corkscrew in his seat to face me as best he could. Until now he had simply been stealing glances at me in the mirror. A jovial smile had begun creeping across his face as we approached nearer and nearer to my destination. As I had first hopped in, my driver was stern and wordless. But about halfway to the hotel from O'Hare, it was as if an idea had entered his mind and immediately brightened his mood. "Are you in need of any additional luggage?" he asked, looking me in the eye from the awkward three-quarters position he had now screwed himself into from the driver's seat. I had packed light, carry-ons only. Perhaps some new clothing or various personal items. I could provide all of these things. Very useful. And it would not take more than a minute. I was not in a hurry, and so I agreed to take a look if we would not have to travel much farther to do so. My driver's grin widened. "I have it all here in the trunk of my cab." He had parked halfway down the street from my hotel, and tacitly refused to park any closer. I cannot afford to get any nearer to those crazy valets. This was the only explanation he would offer for the strange behavior, and he offered it through lips that pursed tightly around each syllable. The street was relatively empty, so we met at the back of his car. He then opened the trunk with a worn key from his pocket. Even then, I found it strange that he would not simply pop the lock from inside the cab. Knowing what I know now, I'd be willing to bet that any automatic mechanisms for the locks in that cab have been disabled for a long time. "You see," my driver said with a melodramatic wave of his hands. It was a theatrical impression of a frustrated person, and it struck me immediately as insincere. A very strange man abandoned all of his things here with me when he left my cab. I only realized this much later in the day. I searched for him over a whole month. I swear that I did search diligently. He licked his lips before pressing more effort into his plastered-on salesman's smile. "But I am growing so tired of storing all these things. They make my trunk useless with their great volume. Please, I will sell you all this for only $20 extra on the price of your fare." He opened the nearest bag to reveal a gorgeous, expensive-looking silk shirt folded neatly on top. Unfolding it so that I could see, he held it up and said, "This shirt alone is worth much more than the price I ask. And as I look, I am certain it will fit you. Look, it must be exactly your size. Good luck follows you, I think, because I simply must be rid of these things today." The shirt was blue with subtle purple accents on the sleeves. "Please, my friend, take these things." His eyebrows rose together in a playful expression of mock begging. I deliberated internally for a brief moment but soon agreed. His hand shot out for the money. Eagerly, the driver unloaded 3 pieces of luggage, enough for one person to carry alone, but just barely. I grumbled to myself that I should have been more insistent that he park closer to the hotel, but knew that the momentary struggle with the bags would be worth its material reward once I made it upstairs. The driver dusted his hands against each together with a pleased grin as soon as the third bag had hit the pavement, and then he moved to close the trunk. "Wait," I said. "What about that duffel bag?" I pointed towards the back of the trunk. Against the far wall of the deep, unlit space was a bulging vinyl bag. It was by far the largest piece of luggage, much larger than the 3 bags now sitting on the sidewalk next to me. Along its bottom were a number of dried and crusted over stains the same color as rusted iron. It was as if something inside had been allowed to leak itself dry, but the bag itself looked salvageable enough to me. "My friend. He laughed sharply, but his face had turned suddenly cruel. You do not want to waste your time with this. It weighs as much as a man and has nothing valuable inside. I stepped forward and reached a hand into the trunk to pull the bag forward. No harm in looking, I thought absently to myself. After all, hadn't I just made a deal for all the luggage in the back of this man's cab? Like lightning, the driver's hand shot forward and gripped my wrist. Before I could even react to being touched, my arm was being thrown roughly backwards with enough force to spin me halfway around on my feet. I took a stumbling step away from him and the car just to keep from falling down. This is a personal bag. It is my own. He grew deadly serious again, stern and stony like when he had first picked me up. Within 5 seconds the trunk was shut and locked once more. Wordlessly, he re-entered his vehicle and accelerated away. He hadn't lied about the value of the things I now examined in my hotel room. Among other items I found a gold wedding band, a gaudily expensive timepiece fitted on a rich suede watch strap, and a pair of designer sunglasses. Quickly, I was willing to forget how strange the whole situation earlier had been. For the next week of my stay in Chicago, I felt as if I was leading a charmed life. Everything did fit neatly to my proportions, just as my driver had promised. Now I realize he chose me for precisely this reason. Twice during my stay at the hotel, I saw that same driver sitting in his cab outside, but never close enough for security cameras to record his presence. This did not strike me as strange at the time because taxis always congregate outside hotels. I explained it away internally, and this almost made me a dead man. If I hadn't turned on the local news in the evening just before my flight home, I might not have known to deliberately avoid him. If the TV had stayed off, and the next morning he had simply waved me over with another almost charming story and the offer of a discount fare, I wouldn't be alive to tell you all this now. I caught the evening news report just as it had begun. We have a breaking development in the case of the mutilated John Doe discovered 2 nights ago near Marquette Park. The anchorwoman spoke flatly, as if her honed professionalism could not quite mask her discomfort while reporting such a story. The body, which became an instantly notorious case for Chicago PD due to the brutality with which teeth and identifying fingertips had been destroyed, is now confirmed to be the remains of one Mark J. Dressler from Summit County, Ohio. Mr. Dressler arrived in the city on business but reportedly never made it to his hotel. Police say his baggage was claimed from the airport, with security footage confirming Mr. Dressler picked the bags up himself before leaving, but that his room reservation was never claimed. This is the last known photograph of Mr. Dressler alive, taken by his daughter as he prepared for his flight that morning. The graphic behind the newscaster filled the screen to show a man who was sharply dressed in a blue and purple silk shirt. On his wrist was an expensive timepiece with a rich leather band. Perched on his head were the same pair of designer sunglasses that, as I lunged in a clumsy panic for the phone, now clattered onto the hotel room floor. As 911 put me through to an investigating detective's personal line, I racked my brain for useful details about the driver and his cab. The line connected, and I told them everything I could. I never got his name, exactly, I was embarrassed to admit it. But I'm sure he worked for SBRI Tele-Service Cab. I remember that it was painted in big block letters on both sides of the car. There was silence on the line, then a sigh. You're sure that's what it was? That was definitely what it said. The detective's voice had taken on a tone of plain disappointment. I'm positive. That's not a real cab company. The voice on the line sounded agitated, perhaps even disgusted by my naivete. At least, it's not one operating in the state or anywhere nearby. Whoever this guy is, he's driving people around in an unregistered vehicle. And he's probably repainted it by now. There was another sigh of frustration, then parting words. Call us back if you can think of anything else. The line clicked and then went dead. I'm in the terminal now and typing this up as I wait for my flight. It was hell on my nerves getting here, though. It's impossible to know how far he's fled, or how nearby he may even still lurk, now that Mark Dressler has come to light. With fresh paint on his unlicensed car, he can hide in plain sight almost anywhere for as long as he pleases. Someone will have to catch him in the act. They'll have to grab for that duffel bag full of teeth and fingertips, or whatever was seeping those terrible, rust-colored stains, and to take it from him before he locks up and slips that old, worn key back into his pocket. They'll have to scatter the evidence into the street for everyone to see before he can make his escape. It will need to be in a public place, and whoever tries it will need to be strong enough to escape the crushing grip of his lightning-fast hands once they've crossed him. If you're planning a trip to the Midwest anytime soon and don't have the stomach for what I'm describing, then I'd seriously recommend public transportation.